And it was bad enough to have skin contagion, but to have bells around one's ankle and have to cry out, unclean, unclean, every time he saw someone. And everyone was shrunk away in fear. The fear of the disease, fear also of the prejudices of the crowd, and fear of authority, because man-made laws directed this. But there was this Jesus, and there was something about him. And the leper then came to him and pleaded, "If you wish, you can make me clean." Try to picture the scene. This poor man cut off from his family, the camaraderie of his friends, cut off from work. Only imagine the sadness and the isolation that such a person endured. And Jesus, moved with pity, touched him. And in doing that, he himself was made unclean according to the law. Now we can come to understand Jesus ever more profoundly. A man of compassion, of caring, oh yes, but more. Jesus was a free man. He was not captured by the slogans and the cliches and the fear that surrounded him. No, a free person. And that's why he broke bread with sinners and he associated with foreigners. Jesus putting into action his understanding of the dignity and the worth of every human being. It's one thing to say that, and it's another thing to act upon. For Jesus, people came first, and all man-made laws came after. And then Jesus said, "Go, show yourself to the priest," because Jesus was part of the community. And the priest was the one who was to declare someone clean. So, Jesus, the free man, sets others free. It's a very important Christian understanding of freedom. It's one thing to talk about freedom from oppression. It's one thing to say we have freedom of speech and freedom of the press, but it's another thing to say we have freedom for something. Jesus used his freedom to bring to the human community unity and peace and forgiveness. So must we. So how then do we connect this to life? In almost every human community, sometimes even the family, in almost every community there are insiders and outsiders, the ins and the outs, the privileged and the needy. And the configurations take different shapes and definitions. But if we would seek holiness in the way of Jesus, we reflect on the way in which he interacted with others, especially the most needy, and then we do what he did. First of all, we have to open our minds and our hearts. We become aware of those near and far needing the compassion of the Lord. And we, in turn, need to evidence that we are free to act for peace and justice and unity. You know, beyond the intimacy and the immediacy of family and an immediate community, there are always those who are outside the loop. They're separated, isolated, oftentimes prejudiced against. One of the things that separates people is poverty. So many people are born into grinding poverty. And almost all of us, myself included, are born into middle class, sometimes upper middle class, and maybe a few into wealthy families. And all of us are given talents and education and models and opportunity that so many do not receive. Compassion and the way we think. Long years ago, I ministered at 39th and the Dan Ryan St. George Parish. If you know Chicago, you know what that means. It means those high-rises that are on the east side of the Dan Ryan. And on occasion, I would look out of my comfortable rectory, and I would look across the Dan Ryan, I would see a light go on, maybe in the 5th floor, and I would think, maybe some little tiny infant is being brought up to that 5th floor. And what does he or she have to expect from life? He or she will live with very inferior education, with inadequate food, and so very frequently without the models for knowing how to respond to life. Like the leper in today's gospel, the impoverished in our American society cry out, "If you wish, you can touch me and make me free." You know, I think of a couple of things in our American society that changed everything, especially for the Catholic community. First of all was the way in which the nation was able to give the GIs, when they came back, the GI Bill of Rights. And for the first time, large numbers of Catholic people, especially from the ethnic groups, the Irish, the Lithuanian, the Polish, the Italian, for the first time in great numbers, they went to college. And today, they have enriched the nation. Why? Because they were given opportunities. And I think also of the Marshall Plan, going way back into history, after the Second World War, and the whole of Europe being challenged, the whole to become communists. And so we wisely were able to sort of address the needs of the people in Italy and France, especially those two, and Germany. And we rebuilt those nations, helped to rebuild them. Those were two instances of the way in which the American society reached out and touched a needy world with life. We can do the same with the poor of our nation, if we wished. But it seems we don't. So who are we then? Well, you and I are the privileged of this world. And because we have been privileged, we are chosen to follow the way of Jesus. And in our freedom, to reach out and do what we can for those who are not privileged. So that it be somehow a level playing field. And so that the life-giving power of Jesus will be evidenced. At the beginning of his ministry, Jesus yelled out, "Repent, turn your mind inside out and outside in. Think differently from the world around you. Repent because the reign of God is at hand right now where we are." You know, I can't tell you in the various circumstances of your lives what you are to do. But I know what I have to do, and I invite you to do the same. To open our sacred scriptures and to read about Jesus and the way in which he responded to life. We have a work to do. We have to make the church credible in the world that no longer sees us as credible for all kinds of reasons, many of them from our own fault. But we are the ones that have to make the church credible. And the way we do it is by living in the way of Jesus. And when we do that in the little and big ways, somehow, you know, people will see us and they'll see that we're different. And we'll see that they will see that we are life givers. So then, reading the sacred scriptures and seeing Jesus as he interacts with life, we will say, "Well, Lord, what do you want me to be?" And he's going to answer us, and we have to be prepared, because maybe we won't like to hear what he has to say.